shocking statement. A handful of $500 FPV drones turned a layered S-400 network into a smoking ruin, without outrunning missiles or jamming anything. They simply vanished into the radar's own rules. We'll break down the invisible trick. Lateral movement that reads like sea clutter, radial velocity near zero, and relay boats masking control links as normal maritime noise. Watch on to learn the exact thresholds and blind wedges these drones exploited, and why air defenses tuned for jets and missiles never got a reliable track, until the power lines, antennas, and data hubs were already gone. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Why did a billion-dollar radar stare at a moving threat and see nothing but empty ocean? Because it was trained to ignore it. S-400-era radars grew up hunting at altitude. Their algorithms lean into speed, closure, and big radar cross-sections. A jet or a cruise missile throws off strong returns and a healthy Doppler signature straight down the antenna's throat. To keep operators from drowning in noise, these systems reject what lives near the surface. Slow, low targets creeping sideways across the beam. That choice makes sense when your worst day is a Mach 2 inbound at 40,000 feet. It breaks when the fight drops to wave height. The battlefield shifted while the filters stayed the same. FPV drones now run a few feet above the water, drifting along shorelines and hull contours, not charging head-on. They don't match the radar's expected profile, so the rules that clean the screen cut them out. What looks like discipline in the display becomes a hole in the defense. Here's the physics the drones leaned on. Radars don't measure true ground speed. They measure radial velocity, how fast a target moves toward or away from the antenna. Slide sideways relative to the radar and your Doppler shift collapses toward zero. If you're also small and low, your return is weak to begin with. Now pair near zero Doppler with a faint echo, and you land in the same bucket as foam, spray, and shoreline clutter. That bucket has a name: Doppler clutter. Waves roll, trees sway, piers bounce, and buoys wander. All of them wash the receiver with slow Doppler energy. Crews use filters to carve that away so the scope stays readable. Those filters sit at set thresholds. If your return lives below the gate for long enough, the system discards you. A tiny drone skimming the sea can meet that condition by design, not luck. On a night run near Mount Arty, the trick played out cleanly. The drones lifted from a sheltered inlet, dropped to sea skim height, and crabbed laterally across the coastal radar's field. They weren't sprinting, they were sliding. Each time a beam grazed them, the return looked like another smear of water motion. The operators saw a stable sea state on the scope. The drones saw a path through bins already flagged as clutter. There's geometry working against the defenders too. Coastal radars have a minimum depression angle. Below that, a blind wedge hugs the surface. Any target riding inside it can peek in and out only when swell or angle momentarily raises it into view. Even then, filtering thresholds bite. Weak, low Doppler returns struggle to pass the first gate, let alone live long enough to become confirmed tracks. Tracking logic layers more friction. A modern set wants multiple consistent hits across several sweeps before it promotes a target. Low-flying drones moving across multiple beams break that continuity. One sweep gets a ghost, the next misses it in the wedge. The next sees a blip below the Doppler gate, and the track file never matures. Handoff settings then fail because the system won't assign guidance to a contact it hasn't confirmed. To the network, the threat keeps winking, not existing. The mini payoff is simple and brutal. The physics of low radial velocity push the drones into clutter filters. From the radar's point of view, they were part of the sea. A billion-dollar array did its job as designed, and the targets walked right through the rules. If sensors couldn't hold a track, what stopped command posts and missiles from compensating when the drones closed to strike range? How do $500 drones reach beyond line of sight without outing the pilot? They borrow the ocean. Operators seeded a floating relay lattice across coastal traffic lanes. Not big craft. Small hulls that read like weekend boats. moving at 12 to 18 knots with lights, wake, and a steady course. Each boat carried a low-power repeater tuned for tight latency. One hop was nothing special. 4 or 5 in a chain pushed control links far past the shore curve, yet kept signal strength quiet enough to blend into normal maritime noise. From the radar shack and the spectrum scope, it looked like another night on the water. No high-power jammer flare, no odd call signs, just routine motion and chatter. Defenders prepared for brute force interference. They expected a screech of RF power, directional beams, and a traceable source to hunt down. They got relays that rode the AIS-like rhythm of the coast. Bearings drifted slightly with tide and ferry schedules. The pattern matched civilian clutter, not a military push. At 15 knots, the echoes stacked into the same bins as fishing runs and harbor transits. The decision tools flagged nothing. Meanwhile, the network stitched the airspace into a hidden corridor for FPVS, low latency enough for precise steering and timed dives on electronics racks. Distributed geometry gave the lattice its bite. With boats strung along different bearings, operators could bring drones in from multiple azimuths at once. That forced coastal sets to cover minimum depression angles from several directions, spreading an already shallow look down across a wider arc. The origin of control stayed ambiguous. Triangulation led to a moving ring instead of a fixed launch site. Even if one relay went dark, 2 others kept the path alive, so the drones never had to climb to reacquire, which would have exposed them to higher angle beams. Routes stayed low and mean. Crews ran sea-skim profiles under the radar's depression angle, dipping into blind wedges that hugged the shoreline. Where cliffs or buildings rose, the drones tucked behind terrain masks. Returning ground effect added steadiness over the water. The radar looked out, not down, and anything under roughly tens of meters near shore fell beneath its gaze. Drones exploited that lane, then crossed short gaps during sweeps when the beam pointed elsewhere. The return, already weak, fell under clutter gates set to keep the scope readable. They rode that invisibility to the perimeter of key sites. The strikes were not random. FPVs carried small fabricated charges tailored for access points. Maintenance panels, junction boxes, cable trays, and waveguide housings were the aim. A shaped charge focuses a copper jet into a narrow spike that drives millions of PSI into a single point. That force melts through steel and opens a path into electronics and power trunks. When that jet meets high voltage or dense wiring, it creates plasma channels and violent shorts. One insert into a cabinet can burn boards, arc across bus bars, and leave a system dead even if the structure looks intact from a distance. 2 cases hit hard. The 96 L6E, a key S400 companion, received a precise strike against its electronics enclosure and feed lines. The result was a blind sector and a dead processor stack worth millions. The Nebo M VHF array took a puncture through a panel that carried vital junctions. The VHF face still stood, but the burned nodes killed its early warning reach. With acquisition and fire control eyes dim, track-to-missile handoff failed. Links between batteries and command posts collapsed under missing data, and local picture quality sank below engagement thresholds. Doppler clutter made the drones invisible. The relay boats flipped the fight asymmetric, letting cheap FPVS erase several links at once and drop an integrated air picture into silence. The next step isn't louder missiles or bigger dishes. It's testing assumptions, adding redundancy in the low look down, and reworking sensor geometry before the next swarm forces the same math. Cheap wins when it bends physics and networks against the defender's filters and geometry. That's the edge. Lateral motion that reads like clutter, blind wedges near the surface, and control links that look like routine traffic. You don't need stealth when the rule set discards you by design. If you plan air defense, audit your clutter gates, depression angles, and link redundancy under load. Test look-down coverage with slow movers and relay chains. If you study warfare, track how modular relays and low-cost swarms reshape timelines and targeting. The next breakthrough won't be a louder radar. It will be better assumptions, tested before contact.